The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Been a passion area. I have been working on mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses for about 7 years. I have spent thousands of hours talking to judges, attorneys, police, those who have been incarcerated. I have cried with the mothers and grandmothers of those locked up. And I have read a stack of transcripts about this high from sentencing hearings, from judges who are staying from the bench. It is horrible. I have to give you this sentence. It is breaking my heart. I think it is a huge mistake to send you away to prison. I wish I could send you to rehab or on probation, but the legislature has tied my hands. So yes, we do have these laws on the books for other drugs. I would not say they're a great success. I think they need fixing badly, and I don't know that the answer is to conform to a broken system and break the system across all drugs. I would rather see us fix what's there. And I have come to believe that mandatory minimum sentences are the greatest source of injustice in our criminal laws right now. But I do certainly agree very strongly that we have to do something about fentanyl. And I believe, and I'm confident everybody in this room is on the same page on that. Fentanyl is an absolute deadly scourge. I have 2 friends who have lost loved ones to fentanyl overdoses in the past 6 months. It is a catastrophe. But because it is such a catastrophe, I think we need to address it in a real way that will genuinely solve the problem. And I don't
right
believe
now,
that this bill is an answer.
happening on the House floor,
the
legislature is debating House Bill 406, which is the known as the fentanyl bill. This is mandatory minimum sentencing for certain offenses dealing with fentanyl. So we're going to keep tabs on the House floor today. We're going to be checking in a lot and seeing what the debate is. This here right now is the minority leader, Representative Rubel, Democrat out of Boise. She's district, where is she? 19, 20, 18? 18. She's out of District 18. Thanks, guys. Anyway, so we're going to dip in here. There also should be debating and voting on another bill today, which is of interest. So we'll be listening to that as well. But thank you for joining us. It is January 29, 2024. And my name is Matt Edwards. Welcome to The Signal. Earlier this morning, there was a bill being presented in committee I'm sorry, it wasn't a bill. It was a presentation being presented in the, I think, the House Education Committee on the Boise State University's survey that we discussed here on this program last week with Brandon Durst. And there were a couple of questions that came up that sort of confirm what we discussed last week. So I want to show you what happened this morning because I think it's relevant. So and I'll get into the details of the survey too if you didn't get to see that interview. But let's play the first clip with Tony Wisniewski, representative out of District 5 up here in Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls.
Madam
Yes.
Chairman and Mr. May, this is a general question about the science of polling. You have two categories of people, those who will respond to a survey and those who won't. Has there been any kind of study as to what the major differences between those two populations might be? And I realize it's hard to get to because if they don't respond, you don't know what they're thinking. But I'm sure there's been some kind of study to indicate what areas of perhaps issues that you've covered in your survey might give us a different perspective for those who are unwilling or unable to answer the survey.
Dr. May.
Madam Chair, Representative Wisniewski, non-response error is a component and a concern with virtually any survey that gets fielded. We do take great pains. One of the things that we do partially to address this is to diversify our survey modes. So by including landline phones, cell phones, online, and text message, we are trying to diversify the ways that we can get the survey out in front of Idahoans through the means that they are more likely to be captured by, rather than obviously if we had done an entirely landline survey, it would be skewed towards people that still have landline phones and would miss out on a large portion of the population. And so when we design the survey each year, we try to take efforts to ensure that we address that non-response through the means where we can. Certainly there are elements where multiple callback attempts to the same number that have been selected to be included in the survey are part of those efforts, and there are essentially several things that we can do in order to try to address non-response. Because we use a stratified sampling frame, we do try to match the population that we know of Idaho according to gender, county, and age, so that we ensure that we have
I think we got him. I mean, and that's with any poll. You know, there are people who aren't going to ever respond to your poll, or if they do, they're very minimal in certain questions they won't answer. I mean, these are all things that we discussed last week when we had Brandon Durst on talking about this poll. This is the Boise State University Idaho public policy poll, and they do this every year. They've done it for the past 9 years, I believe, and they're just trying to get a feel for how Idaho feels about certain topics and where the direction of things are going and all of that, right? And it's very interesting to dive into this poll because this is such a small state. There's not a lot of polling that goes on here. You don't see Gallup or Rasmussen or any of these other big outlets come in here and do polling specifically on Idaho issues. So it's very, very tempting to go forward with this particular poll and then delineate and react to all of the things that are coming out of this. But you have to realize that that Idaho is filled with people who don't want to answer anybody's questions. Okay. And there's certain parts of the state that are more willing to speak to a random caller about their feelings and about the direction of the state and the country, perhaps, than certain parts. So there's a lot of this polling you have to do with a grain of salt, but I understand they want to do it. They want to try and reach. This guy's trying to figure out ways to get respondents from people who normally wouldn't respond. So that's just one factor. Representative Birch, who I'd hate to give this guy any shade, but he asked a really good question. And so let's watch this exchange.
The respondents, was there any distinction between people who are registered voters versus non-registered voters?
Dr. May.
Madam Chair, Representative Birch. No, our sampling frame was adults living in Idaho. We did not screen according to likely voters or registered voters because we were interested in what all Idahoans think and not that particular subset.
Okay, so again, confirming what we knew last time was that there was no question, there was no delineation between whether or not anybody was a likely voter, a registered voter, and why does that matter? Why does that matter? Because one, public policy should be directed at the behests of voters, at the behest of people who are involved in the process. And so, if a legislator or a candidate for a particular position is trying to assess what his constituency might be like, this person will want to engage with the voters and garner their support and exchange ideas and figure out what they need to do when he or she makes it to that position. And so I think there's a real disservice here if they're just looking for warm bodies willing to pick up a phone and talk to somebody. I'm not saying that these people who aren't voters don't have concerns, but there is a certain element to who they're speaking with and garnering this public policy survey that will then shift the direction that certain politicians want to go with based on polling of people who aren't engaged in the process. So a lot of interesting things from this morning, from that hearing. Just wanted to get it on record from the man himself, because that's what we want to do here. All right, it looks like Representative Hill is back up, either answering some questions or talking more about this fentanyl bill. So let's chime in here and see what's happening.
Yes. Chairman yields.
Thank you. I was just looking at the fiscal note, and it says there's no additional expenditures. Even if you have one case in each county, the local government is going to pay for that, and that's not mentioned in the fiscal note. But my other question is, do you consider this bill to be an emergency?
Gentleman 14.
Well, an emergency, since I look at the data and how it serves in this state and the cartels are poised to make action here, yes. And fentanyl is different. It's not like you can't rehabilitate dead. People are dying on this. So it's a different threat. It's this poison, this toxin that's getting into these schools. That's the fear of completely innocent people are being affected by this. Yeah, it's an emergency. I'd go with that.
Lady from 9.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So just a statement, perhaps we should change then the effective date, because this is a July 1st effective date. If we are in a true emergency, we should have this upon passage and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, good ladies. Further debate on the motion. Gentleman 25.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make a comment on the emergency. I believe that
The gentleman has the floor to.
I believe that LSO is including that emergency date on all bills now because of the situation we ran into a couple of years ago when we had the lengthy session that went beyond July 1st. And I could be wrong, but I believe they're still continuing to put in the emergency clause as July 1st. That's what I understood.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the motion. Gentleman from 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and esteemed colleagues.
Would the gentleman like to debate the bill?
I would like to debate against the bill.
The gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
First of all, we all know that this is a nonpartisan bill. Republicans, Democrats, independents can all agree that fentanyl is the worst drug scourge we've seen in our history. No one is in favor of fentanyl. However, this bill's intent is to separate the casual user or the addicted user from the dealer. Now, let's analyze the intent versus what is actually being delivered by this bill. We've seen the poll results that said, as the good gentleman from District 14, 86% of the public want something done about mandatory minimums. The worse the disaster, the more hue and cry there is to try and get this thing fixed. Let's examine whether or not we're fixing this problem. And I happen to agree 100% with the good lady from District 18, excuse me. One of the principles of punishment is that the punishment must fit the crime. So we have to separate those that are truly guilty, the drug dealers, the pushers, the manufacturers, the distributors, from those who just get caught up in this. And by this, I mean, we've also created through our medical system a dependence on opioids. If you look at the case of Rush Limbaugh, and I'm not looking at him from a political standpoint, but he's well known, he had back surgery and intense pain that caused him to do doctor shopping, where he got 2,000 OxyContin pills in a 6-month period. That's 10 pills a day to try and relieve his pain. Now, he did go into rehabilitation, which is what we really need to do. And he was not charged with possession or drug dealing, but the opioid situation has created an involuntary class of users that have to get this medication, and they're shut off by their doctors. So that's a separate issue that we have to work on here in the legislature as well. We all agree that the sentence for someone grabbing someone's arm, which is a form of battery, versus killing somebody brutally should have 2 different sets of punishment. So there's a range of punishment that fit the crime. I sat through 3 hours of public hearings and 2 hours of committee debate last week and the week before. And the one question that was repeatedly asked and never answered was, how much fentanyl are we actually looking at to get us into that first class of offending dealers or users? It was never answered. Well, I have some of the answers. First of all, the National Institutes of Health have indicated that the least detectable amount of fentanyl that can be detected with a lab test or any other test is 0.1 micrograms. Now, all of us who have paid attention in physics and chemistry, and I'm an engineer 2 classes short of a minor in chemistry, understand what milligrams, micrograms, nanograms, and grams are. But I think we need a little bit of clarification to all of us who are going to vote on this bill as to exactly what we're talking about. I have some props on my desk, which I'm not allowed to use. A sugar cube weighs 3.6 grams, okay? 4 cubes is 14.4 grams. That is the highest range of the powder or bulk substance that is talked about in this bill for the lowest category of offense. So 4 to 14 grams for bulk usage, powder or compressed, or between 100 and 250 pills. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Now, with the aforementioned minimum detectable amount of fentanyl, if a casual user has 100 pills and you use the test that the NIH says is a detectable amount, he can have 0.85 grams of fentanyl, which if he were to ingest 235 of those pills, he would have a fatal dose. So he could ingest almost the entire amount of the 100 to 250 range and not receive a lethal dose with the least detectable amount. Conversely, the drug dealer who is allowed to have 4 grams to 14 grams, think of 14 grams of pure fentanyl, which we have been told by some of the testifiers is now coming into the states so that the drug dealers can manufacture pills because they have the raw materials. 14 grams is 14,000 milligrams. Okay, there's 1,000 milligrams per gram. That is 7,000 lethal doses. Okay, so we compare the worst condition, 7,000 lethal doses, to the casual drug user with 100 pills with the least detectable amount of 0.85. There's a 16,000 to 1 ratio in that one category alone. 16,000. Now, are you trying to tell me with the content of this bill, with that unspecified amount of, quote, the least detectable amount of fentanyl, that we should allow a 16,000 range of fentanyl in the product? It's like saying we're going to give the same sentence to someone who steals $100 versus someone who steals $1.6 million. That's the $16,000 or 16,000 ratio difference between the minimum and the maximum in that first category. I'm not even going to talk about the second categories. Now let's talk about the deadliness of pills or fentanyl or drugs in general. I have on my desk, unfortunately I can't show it to you, it's a prop, a bottle of aspirin. The lethal dose of aspirin for a 150-pound person is 105 pills. So some of our more delicate representatives, no names intended, if they ingested that full bottle of pills, would receive a lethal dose of aspirin, readily available over the counter in any grocery store, any dollar store, any drugstore, commonly available. Now, that minimum amount of fentanyl in the 100 pills that this casual user or addicted person who's coming off of opioids and needs this from the street drugs, he would have to take 235 pills for a fatal dose. So that aspirin, readily available anywhere, is twice as deadly as the least amount detectable pills that will get somebody a 3-year prison sentence. This, to me, is absolutely unacceptable. Now, like I said, nowhere in the bill do we actually talk about the quantity available. It's only the detection technique, which can change with time as well. We might see better ability to detect fentanyl in the future with advanced laboratory techniques that we may not have right now. Without that being specified, it's like saying the speed limit is undetermined because we don't know how to measure it right now with any kind of accuracy. So I'd like to digress a little bit and say that one of the corporal works of mercy is to feed the poor and to visit those in prison, hopefully to bring the word of Christ to them. We should do better and prevent, many of us, most of us have never been able to do that. Some in ministry have, but I'd say let's do one better. Let's prevent some of these people that are going to get caught up in this from going to prison in the first place. All they're going to do in prison is get the $100,000 pass or coursework in criminology. And I don't mean criminal justice. They're going to be trained by the best criminals that money can buy. I realize that this is a emotionally and physically and politically charged issue. And the big elephant in the room is, what am I going to do to tell my constituents that if I vote against this bill, what is the press going to do to crucify us? And what are our constituents going to do, or our political opponents? I know that's weighing heavily on a lot of our minds. I'd like to quote C.S. Lewis. He says, "If you look for truth, you may find comfort in the end. If you look for comfort, you will not get either comfort or truth." When we vote on this bill, I'd like to suggest a unique difference from the way we voted in the past, when it's all legal. I'd like to see a two-part vote. First, vote with your minds, independent of the political impact. I want to see a lot of reds up there. And if we don't have enough reds to send the bill back for reconsideration and correction of some of these horribly serious problems, then I would certainly understand you changing your vote from red to a green to report to the press or to your constituents the way you want to vote. But let's bear in mind, I don't want to make my decision politically on the backs of innocent kids going to jail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are listening to debate on the House floor, House Bill 406. This is known as the fentanyl bill, implementing mandatory minimums in the commission of trafficking and such of fentanyl. Very serious topic today, very lengthy debate happening. The House got opened up at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock, and we're almost closing in on the next hour. And so we're going to keep tabs on what's going on there and and so forth. We do have a few guests lined up, but as things are moving and as things are very fluid, we'll see how things go. Some of our guests are actually in debates themselves, so sometimes that won't happen. But we'll keep tabs on this. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more right after this.
There's a saying in Idaho: Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
I'm torn. I agree with, on the one hand, the fact that fentanyl is a scourge. We've heard a lot of testimony in the committee that vetted this bill, indicating the magnitude of the scourge that it represents. And like most or all of you all, I want to do something about that scourge. I also believe that this bill is flawed, and flawed in some fairly significant ways. And we've heard a number of people who have debated today and pointed out some of those flaws. I'm not going to, I'll mention those, but I'll pass over them fairly quickly and get to a couple of things that I think are haven't been touched on, and maybe that I can lend some perspective to. I say that because one, back in 1995, I graduated from law school and went to work as a deputy prosecuting attorney, actually, and have been working as a lawyer in either prosecution or criminal defense ever since. And so I feel like I have some insight to share. I kind of tangentially, a few years ago, I read Team of Rivals, and that book impressed a lesson upon me, which is I feel like when somebody has something to share, they need to share it, and it's a better product is going to result if there are a lot of viewpoints brought to the table and expressed, and then a solution is found, as opposed to trying to surround yourselves with an echo chamber of people that see things the way you see things, and coming up with the solution in that fashion. There's a part of me that says, I wish that the bill that is before us had taken more of a team of rivals approach than I fear it has taken. And so, in any event, I think that the perspective that I bring is important, at least in regard to, sharing some of these concerns. Some of the things that have been mentioned that I'll skip over are the fiscal note and the fact that this will
Okay,
cost.
we are listening to debate on the House floor of House Bill 406. That is the fentanyl, known as the fentanyl bill. Debate has been going on for 45 minutes or so, coming up on 45 minutes or so, maybe longer. And we're hearing back and forth. We're hearing why people think that this bill is important. We're hearing why people think that it's important, but it has flaws. We just saw Representative Wisniewski from District 5, that's in Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls area, discuss that maybe we should vote no so that the bill can be sent back and retooled and then come back in a better form. So he talked a lot about the political ramifications of voting for or against this in his closing remarks. But and now we see Representative Cannon voicing some concern about the bill itself. Today's a busy day. We're going to see if they get into the rest of the bills that were planned today. There were three other bills that were on the third reading calendar, which means that this had been the time to debate and vote on the House floor of the bill. There were three other bills. The last one on the schedule today was also from Representative Hill, was the firearms on school property bill, and this bill would have allowed teachers using an enhanced carry license to carry firearms concealed on school property, and it would also remove the gun-free zone signs that plague our schools. So we'll see if we get to that bill today, but it looks like folks have a lot of opinion, and with 70 representatives sitting in that chair, I think we've heard from maybe 10 or less so far. So there might be a lot of opinions being stood up. So this happens. Sometimes debate will allow this. Will go so far that the bills that were scheduled to be voted upon will just get pushed to the next day or later in the week. So we'll keep tabs on that. Representative Cannon is still speaking, and we'll get to that. So I mentioned earlier, we can see on the board here, we had Senator Taves that was going to join us. He is in his own committee hearings and meetings, and so we will hopefully get him on before the end of the program. I do want to preview, though, because in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to have something really exciting to share with you. And this is a way for you to get involved. And so I want to make sure that you are prepared to hear the message that's coming and get involved, because we want to empower you with the actions necessary to preserve liberty and to preserve our individual rights, and to make sure that we all have a say in our legislative body and in the direction of our state. And so in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to bring on Dalton Traylor here to discuss how you can get involved directly with helping our champions of liberty in this state succeed in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. Let's dip into to Representative Cannon, who's still speaking there. Let's hear some more of this debate.
Is about the weight of 4 paper clips. It's certainly a user amount if we're talking about marijuana. Somebody that possesses that with a detectable amount of fentanyl and with no requirement of showing that the person has the intent to deliver or to distribute or to traffic. I mean, I hope we can all agree that that is potentially a problem. We in committee, we talked about that problem extensively, and I heard more times than I can count that the answer to a concern that we brought up was, quote unquote, prosecutorial discretion, or the discretion of sheriffs and sheriff's deputies and so forth. And it might be from, several years of being a defense attorney, but I am not persuaded that good policy comes from passing bad laws and then relying on discretion. It's very important that we pass good laws that don't have flaws in them, rather than passing a law to which we need to say time and time again, that will never happen, because the good men and women of blue won't let it happen, or our prosecutors won't let it happen. Even if we were to agree that every law enforcement officer in the state was well-intentioned and had good motives, even if we were to agree that every prosecutor in the state could set aside aspirations and political motivations and so forth, who's to say that that's going to be the same picture 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or whatever? It wasn't long ago that we were very anxiously engaged as a body in addressing balance of power issues with emergency powers of the executive branch. And I remember thinking, you know, even if we think the gentleman on the second floor is doing everything right, it's important to balance these powers in a way that the next guy or the next gal doesn't have the ability to abuse his or her discretion. That is important to me. Two more things. One, before I went to law school, I graduated with an economics degree. And over the course of last session and this session, in committee and in talking with people who are in support of this bill,
Okay, Representative Cannon is still debating this fentanyl bill. This is House Bill 406, the fentanyl bill, mandatory minimums, that's being debated. There seems to be a bunch of people standing up that have problems with this bill, and I would imagine that at some point you might even see somebody suggest that this bill be sent to the amending order or to go back to committee so that they can work on it a little bit. The amount of debate here. I mean, everybody agrees that fentanyl is an incredible. It's an incredible narcotic that is. I heard that it's the number one killer of people under 40 right now, and it's incredible to think that that even though having fentanyl and using this stuff is illegal, that there's a need for these sort of mandatory minimum laws and such to try and deter people from bringing this into our state. But there's a lot of debate on that, on whether mandatory minimums work, on whether what they've been done in the past, and how they've handcuffed judges to deliver minimum sentences to people that probably normally under normal circumstances would have only maybe served a year or two, or been let off because it was their specific circumstances didn't warrant 25 years in maximum security prison. So there's a lot of debate going on. I think the folks that are standing up are right to do this. This is what it's all about. No bill should ever come into the legislature, go through committee without having this kind of scrutiny, especially one of such magnitude. And I would expect this from all bills that have wide ramifications, including bills that ban cities from putting masks on your face. I mean, we should have these debates, and these debates go on for a while. So we are going to obviously keep tabs on that. Is Representative Cannon still going? Yes. Okay. He's still going. All right. We'll have him. We'll keep tabs on that as we do such. Okay. What else did I have on my list today? We have time for probably a break to figure that out. So let's take a short break and we'll be back.
There's a saying in Idaho: Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, Idaho Signal here, January 29, 2024. We have been watching the live feed down at the House floor in Boise as House Bill 406 is being debated by the representatives from across the state as the fentanyl bill is being debated. We had mentioned that there's another bill that's scheduled to be on today. I don't think we're going to get to that, but you never know. So we'll keep tabs on that. One of the things that could happen is that they could pass this bill, and it could end up on the Senate side where it gets debated even further, and changes could be made over there. If that were to happen, then the Senate could change the bill, vote on it, and if they voted to pass it, it would then come back to the House, so the House can consider the changes that the Senate just did. So there's a lot riding on this. There's a lot that can happen. I guess it's all about who's going to come in and save the day at the last minute here. But this is a lot of this is the business of the people. This is what happens when bills come up, especially ones like these that have a particularly sensitive topic. And you've got a lot of principled people. You got a lot of folks out there who are very determined because fentanyl maybe has affected their life, has affected their community greatly, and they're being inundated with demands to do something. And a lot of times, sometimes those demands are they come from the heart, as Tony Wisniewski spoke about. Sometimes you're making decisions based on what you're feeling and not necessarily what you're thinking and the ramifications. And look, we're all human. I mean, those things should be taken into account. You can't fly blindly through society without having a heart, but you also can't think about the ramifications of the things that you do because of your acting upon your heart. So there's a lot of it's a big messy business out there, and I'm not one to wax philosophically on all these topics, but this is where we're at, and there's a lot of things going back and forth here. So let's go back down to the House floor. We'll listen here to Representative Cannon, who's been speaking for the better part of maybe 15 minutes, and so let's see where he's at right now on this important topic.
This would further weaken that, and I think that we ought to just know what the effect of this bill would be if it became law. It would further weaken that by doing this. In these drug cases, the element that is the most important is going to always be, not always, but a high percentage of the time be, what was their intent? What was their mens rea? Did they have that criminal intent? What this law does is it says, we don't want the jury to decide if the person had the requisite amount of criminal intent. All we need to do is say, was there a mixture that had a detectable amount of fentanyl in it? And if so, we are going to tell the jury the intent element is met. You don't get to weigh in on that. And that's a concern to me because, again, I think that we are oftentimes, and it's worse when there's a compelling reason to act and to act quickly, when there's an emergency, when there's a scourge. We like to get things done, and we don't always slow down and say, what is the effect of this on our fundamental rights, this fundamental right of freedom, this fundamental right of due process? What are we actually doing here? I mentioned earlier, this is going to sweep up in the net some people that aren't guilty at all. And the way it does that is because along with these other two things that I've talked about, the weight and the mixture language, in practice, what you have are other gray areas, and I'll throw one out there. I'll throw a couple of examples out there. In response to the idea that prosecutors are never going to charge this in the wrong way, I will say that I'm personally aware of a case in Custer County where a mandatory minimum methamphetamine charge was made on somebody who allegedly had a user amount of methamphetamine. When his house was raided, he tried to dispose of that in a bathtub full of water, and the case was charged as the mixture of the bathtub full of water, which I don't know if, I'm not very good at math, but that's probably like 500 pounds of a mixture containing methamphetamine. That's, now, he wasn't convicted. He didn't go serve a mandatory minimum sentence, but that gets charged. And then when it gets charged, immediately there's a plea offer made that says, hey, just plead guilty to the possession of meth and we won't, we'll drop the reference to this guy being a trafficker. And maybe that's a great result. I mean, I don't know. That's something that we need to weigh as a body is that kind of sledgehammer okay with us? I'm personally familiar with cases under the mandatory minimum laws for marijuana trafficking where marijuana is baked into a sheet of brownies or something like that. And it's charged as a trafficking case because a sheet of brownies weighs more than a pound. Again, that follows up with an offer, a plea offer. Hey, we'll drop the trafficking charge. Everybody knows he's not a trafficker. Just plead guilty to the possession of marijuana and we'll be done with this. Where innocent people get caught up is when you also look at constructive possession cases. And that's where, say, a passenger or the driver in a vehicle is part of a drug bust and drugs are found in the vehicle. And I can assure you that if this bill becomes law, that there will be people who were in a vehicle and had no knowledge of any contraband being in there, but who get charged with a trafficking amount of fentanyl and who basically have to make the decision, do I go to trial and try to prove my innocence, knowing that the stakes are a mandatory amount of time in prison, or do I plead guilty to a crime I did not commit? These are weighty, weighty issues. I don't know where I am on this, but I do know that it's important that we have the discussion rather than rush to judgment on a bill that I think could be improved by a couple of fairly minor tweaks, minor in that they wouldn't affect the deterrence, in my opinion, of this bill, and they would greatly enhance the protections that otherwise we're giving away. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Further debate on the bill, on the motion. Good lady from 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Point of privilege.
Lady has the floor.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, I don't want to quash the debate at all. That's not why I'm here. But if we start repeating ourselves, I'd remind everyone that all those FFA kids are waiting for us for lunch.
Further debate on the bill. Good gentleman from 10. Gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
In favor, and thank you, good lady from 8. That's a good incentive to go quickly. I've lost a lot of sleep over this bill. It didn't come about fast. We went through this last year in our committee. Middle of the summer, I'd wake up 3 in the morning and tell my wife, I'm thinking about that stupid.
To talk about in favor of the bill. We have our guest available, and I want to make sure we get this out there because this is pretty important. So if you want to keep tabs on this, you can go to the Citizens Alliance citizensallianceidaho.org, hit the Take Action button, and down at the bottom you'll see where we link to the live stream. You can also go to the legislative website and watch it from there, but we thought we'd make it hopefully pretty easy to find if you just go to our website. So if you want to keep tabs on that, we'll do that. But for the last segment here, I want to bring in Dalton Traylor. Dalton Traylor is a political strategist with Mobilize the Message, and he is a general in when it comes to door knocking, the troops in the door knocking world. And Dalton, welcome to the program. I know you're on the ground there in Boise. A lot of activity happening at the State House, but your job is mainly out in the field, so to speak, mobilizing folks to door knock and get involved in helping preserve liberty and individual rights and getting people fired up for the good message of liberty and our champions. So welcome to the program. What can you tell us about your time in Boise there and what you're up to?
It's been nice. I got here about a week ago, came up from Mississippi. This is not my first time in Idaho, though. I was here last election cycle 2 years ago. And, back then we, it was our first run at, trying to do something exactly like we're doing right now with this level of local recruitment and, endorsing this many candidates. Obviously, I had a lot of people we endorsed last time. And I believe we ended up I kind of had 9 full-timers last time, and we knocked about 65,000 doors. And I'm hitting the ground a little early this time around. And the reason why we're going to be a little more ambitious, I think we're probably going to be aiming for somewhere around 100,000 doors. And so I'm just kind of here in Boise, getting to know, local activists, student groups, whatever. I've got to know the kids at the Turning Point USA chapter and the Young Americans for Liberty and college Republicans already. And I'm hoping to get into, probably county GOPs here soon, get to know some folks there. But it's looking like we got a lot of good prospects already. And I'm looking forward to hitting the ground sometime in late March is when we're going to really start hitting doors a lot.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Well, full disclosure, everybody, because I am executive director of Citizens Alliance of Idaho. And I'm also the treasurer for our PAC, the Citizens Alliance of Idaho PAC. And what we do is we work with Mobilize the Message. We work with Dalton here to recruit door knockers. Dalton, you do this across the entire country. Mobilize folks into door knocking teams. I want to get into that in a second, but I just want the folks to realize out there that what my organizations do is get involved. We really try and get as much involved as possible in helping our pledge signers and those who are in good standing and folks who are willing to sign our pledge. And so getting door knockers out there to cover the entire state, which last cycle, like you just mentioned, you knocked doors from the east through the Treasure Valley and up into the north. It was incredible. But
I believe we had 14 districts we ended up knocking in, and towards the end, it was kind of rough. I had a team in Coeur d'Alene, helping Alfieri and Taves, who's supposed to be on here today. And then I had another team back in Idaho Falls knocking for Barb Ehart, and that's 8 hours apart. So it was pretty rough trying to manage those people.
Right. So just a little bit of background, because I want to get some of your bona fides here, get people excited about who they'll be working under if they want to get involved in door knocking. We'll get into that in a second, but talk to me about some of your national campaigns, where you've been across the nation and who you've helped mobilize door knockers for.
Oh man. You say all over the country. That's a pretty accurate statement. I think at this point I'm down to about 8 or 9 states that I have not been to. And, last time I was here, probably the biggest one that I've done, actually it's the biggest contract that I've done. And it was a real dream for me when I first got into politics was 2016. And I was a big Rand Paul supporter. And last time I was here, we were doing this. And then immediately after, we already had lined up to do 500,000 doors for Rand Paul. And we were really looking forward to that. And so a lot of the kids that I recruited, especially, from like towards BYUI or whatever, whenever we finished here, that was what we had lined up. And it was a big selling point to be able to tell people, yeah, you get to go knock for Rand Paul when you're done here. And that to the day, that's been the biggest contract that I've done so far. But, I've helped with, many candidates, even up to this year. We've done a little bit of stuff back in, the summer. We did some stuff with the presidentials. We had some, friends that were helping with Vivek and had some guys help with that a little bit. It's just been basically, I've been graduated college 2 years ago and been on the road doing this.
Wow.
Ever since.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean that's what you're looking for. You're looking for other young, motivated people who can get behind not just a particular person, but the whole idea of this movement. I mean, this is a conservative movement. This is a liberty-minded movement that we're trying to get people engaged back into this process. So when you are looking for door knockers, I mean, who do you see as the most viable candidates for this type of position?
Yeah, actually, probably the perfect one is, and I can tell you this from being a political science major, a lot of the kids that I graduated with didn't necessarily have anything lined up. You go get a bachelor's degree in political science and then you find out, well, you're going to have to go work a normal job.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some paths into politics and most of them are not well paying. You can go work for, be a staffer, on the Hill or something and make $2,000 a month or whatever. And, really you're just sort of an office, desk jockey. You're not making a huge difference in anything. Whereas this, I love this for kids that are just getting out of college, because it's like, it pays a little better. And literally, we've been involved in elections where the difference was a few hundred votes.
Right.
And you can bet your bottom dollar that, us knocking 30,000 doors in that district made that
And
difference.
And that's the key right there. I mean, we've heard from many people, you got to have this strategy, you got to have that strategy. But we know, you absolutely know, that the number one strategy for candidates to beat an incumbent is for them to be out there door knocking and to have volunteers out there door knocking. And then the number one way for an incumbent to keep their seat is also to go out there and door knock and have advocates out there door knocking for us. Why do you think that is? Why is door knocking the number one way to get people motivated to vote for your candidate?
I would say it's just a foolproof way to contact a voter. You can run ads on this website or that website or whatever, and people may or may not see it, but making sure somebody takes an item with your face and your name and your platform to a voter's house, like, they're going to get it. Yeah, they may just glance at it and throw it away. If, they're not there, they don't answer the door, and we just have to leave it on the door or whatever. But they're going to see it. It's a much more foolproof way of contacting people. And then there's statistics on it. And those, if any of the people watching this have been to the candidate training seminars y'all did back in the spring and summer, I know Justin, he likes to do this statistical breakdown on, you win one voter per X amount of ads you run, one voter per X amount of, lit drops, and then per X amount of, voter contacts, which is conversations we're having with people at the door, talking to them about who they're planning to support. And that's the highest effectiveness one. That's like 1 out of 6 you win votes there. It's just a very aggressive, foolproof way of contacting voters.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you're right. The personal contact, the actual, and when you have a young, hungry person who's like, hey, I really like this guy.
Yeah, it impresses people when they see a young person come do it too. An older, Republican voter will see a young person going and supporting this Republican, and they like that.
Right.
And that's a big part of it as well.
That's great. Okay, so let's say someone's watching right now and they're like, oh, this would be perfect for my son, or there's a college student who should be doing something else, but he's watching Idaho Signal right now. What can they do? How do they get in contact with you if they want to sign up specifically for Idaho and go out there and help pound the pavement for liberty?
You can go to campaignjobsnow.com. That's all one word, and then there you see in the middle, it's got a Idaho specific application.
Fantastic.
When you submit that, I get it. So we're probably, like I say, we're probably not actually starting hitting these doors hard until the late March. So it won't be super fast. We'll get back in touch with you probably, but you will certainly hear from us if you put in an application before we get going.
Great. And now you'll accept folks who just want to volunteer and get on your door knocking team, but let's make sure people understand that this is an actual job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get a little bit of salary from this.
Oh yeah, and that's last time that's what I was saying. I was also sort of getting people lined up for Rand Paul. Obviously, nobody's going to volunteer to go all the way to Kentucky, and just stay there 6 months and not for free. It is a full-time job. Now, I take part-time people. We have a hourly rate kind of that we've came up with. If you have, you're somebody that you have another job and you really like the person that y'all are going to endorse in their district, and they just want to knock on the weekends or whatever, we have an hourly rate. But I'm looking for at least, like I say, at least a dozen full-time people that basically can get out there and knock, at least 120 or 30 doors a day, every day except Sunday. And, we pay $120 a day. We cover gas. And then say you want to help, but we're not endorsing anybody in your district, and the nearest endorsement is maybe 3 hours or 4 hours away or whatever, I will relocate you, and I cover housing as well.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, there's no excuses, folks. No excuses out there. Campaign Jobs Now. We got it scrolling down there at the bottom. Dalton Trailer, thank you so much for coming in. We're going to check in with you again to see how it's going. And I know I'll be checking with you off camera as well, but we're going to check in with you as well and see how things are going out there. Thanks for coming on today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on.
All right, great. All right, folks, let's check in with the House floor and see what's going on there. Is there any activity? It looks like maybe they're at ease. What do we got?
I'm not sure who I've impugned here. So I'm just talking reality of what's going on here with this legislation. There's a lot of reasons people do drugs, and I don't think until you're in those shoes you understand, or any of us would understand. But I will say it's destroying families across this country. And I don't know that throwing more people in prison is going to help that problem. I think it's a symptom of a bigger problem going on in our society. And we really need to dig deep on why all these people are drawn towards drugs. And so that's some of my thoughts on this legislation. I still am going back and forth. I'm not sure how exactly I'll vote. But I do think we do need to do something about the problems of fentanyl in this state.
Thank you, good lady. Further debate on the bill.
All right, folks. I think when we cut in there, Heather we missed. Maybe there was some fireworks when someone interrupted Heather. She gets interrupted all the time on the floor. Someone has to do a compilation of every time she gets interrupted. Okay. That we're over our hour limit that we usually like to set here. So I want to thank you, everybody, for watching. I want to thank Dalton Trailer for joining us. Make sure you go over to campaignjobsnow.com, campaignjobsnow.com if you're interested in the door knocking aspect there. But also importantly, equally important, is idahosignal.com. Head over there and give us a small donation, or shoot us a message and tell us what we need to do better, or what you like seeing and want us to do more of or less of, whatever it is. Send us a message. Let us know. I want to hear from you. The comments that we're getting on X, on Rumble, on YouTube are great. What's really fascinating is that we also broadcast live to Facebook, but Facebook doesn't seem to want to show you that we're broadcasting. So we get very, very minimal traffic on Facebook. But Rumble is blowing up. A lot of good comments on Rumble. So make sure you head over there and subscribe. All right, folks, we will be back tomorrow with some more guests, and maybe they'll still be debating this bill. Who knows? But we'll keep you up to date on that. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.